three very wise people. Let's put it that way, okay? Neil Pollard, Surface Technology Manager at Glencore. John Crockett, Mine Superintendent, Savage River Mine, Grange Resources. And Craig Singleton, Maintenance Manager of Roseberry Mine, part of MMG. So let's get started with this all now. How would you describe an OAS today? Operator Awareness System today. How does it work? What does it do?
So probably the short version would be it detects eye closure. So it could be eye closure from anything, distraction events, could be sun glare, could be legitimate fatigue events, micro sleeps, etc. That's really what that system's about, is just protecting our workforce, our operators. Working long shifts, obviously fatigue's a pretty big factor in that, and this camera-based system's really, really great in protecting our operators in that space.
Yeah. Well, you agree?
Yep.
Yeah, pretty much that's it?
Yep.
Okay, well, that's good. And in these systems now that are being developed, what are the main issues? In other words, this has been done for a little while now. What are the current leading edge issues in the industry? Start you, but I want to ask everybody the same thing.
Yes.
Go ahead.
I think trying to automate these systems is probably the next challenge. So still very, human based. You still need to verify the events that's created on board the vehicle. So being able to automate some of those processes around, validating the event, notification to the operator automatically as well is probably really the next steps. Still a lot of humans involved in the system. It's doing a great job in cab, does everything automated in the cab, but off board when it starts to review the events and analyze the data as well. I think that's really the next step. It's where we need to go.
Yeah. John.
Neil hit the nail on the head, really. I suppose the only thing I'd add to that would be the moving forward, certain intersections and interactions, having a system that can predict what an operator may do in the cab, so there's not that false alert. So I think particularly our operation, that would be a game changer moving forward with AI.
Yeah. Craig, what would you add?
Our challenge is a little bit different. Like on top of, I guess, the challenges that they've spoken about, the other side of that is in underground. Like most systems will rely on connectivity or a network to operate. In underground, you've got very limited network availability. Like our decline is, say, 12 kilometres long to the bottom, and we've only got about 6 or 8 pickup points along there. So sometimes the data to get back to, as Neil said, because it still requires human intervention and data analysis, sometimes that data can have gaps in it to where it actually picks up. So the alert could be potentially 20 minutes old by the time you get a level 3 alert. So certainly underground presents some challenges with any technology, because in an old mine like ours where it's 89 years old or whatever it is, again, we've probably got through the whole mine outside of the decline, there's probably only 10 or 12 access points to where it'll connect to the network for split seconds, basically. Like it's got to transfer a lot of data really quickly in those times it goes past. So certainly that's probably our biggest challenge with technology.
Yeah. So these are the frontier, as we might say, in the advancement of this issue, right? These things that you've just described, what we need to do next. Okay, great. Here's another way to look at it. In what situations are these systems most important or most impactful? Let's go back the other way. Craig, what do you say?
As in what impact do they have?
Yeah.
Certainly, I mean, for years and years in mining, we've focused on increasing production capability, making things bigger, faster, more efficient. And I guess now the technology is becoming available to, I guess, assist in that safety of your people and of your equipment. Right. So some of the impacts that we've seen, particularly with this one, and the system works really well to the point that we've probably lost 2 operators that just couldn't manage their fatigue. And we helped them through a lot of processes and got them assessed, but they just couldn't manage their fatigue. And certainly the impact on some of the other operators, there's probably 6 or 8 that have gone away and had sleep apnea assessments, and they're better for it. So not only has it reduced our likelihood of fatigue events in our mine, it's actually helped people improve their life as well. So
Right. John, your view on this?
Absolutely same path, basically.
Yeah.
So had a lot of people with similar results, and from a health aspect, so taking safety away from it for a second,
Yeah.
the people's health has improved. So we've been able to sit people down, give them some more tools to be able to manage their fatigue. I mean, the safety side of it's huge. We've actually found an interesting sideline to all this that after a certain number of critical events, if an operator has one, we do a mandatory break. When they come back, they're more productive. It's actually really interesting to see the data when you pull it out. But the long story short is we've got 30-odd trucks running around. We now know that each one of those operators is alert and doing their job safely and efficiently.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Neil, a question that naturally arises is, this is wonderful. Why wasn't it done before?
I don't think the technology was around. So, I mean, we first trialed it in 2015. So there were a couple of products on the market at that time, but there were other technologies out there, but you couldn't ever validate the event. So, the camera-based system gives you the ability to actually validate the event. So other systems out there just didn't have that capability. I'd just like to pick up on a couple of things the boys have said. I absolutely agree that it's all about the human, right? So it's about identifying that there's an issue out in the vehicles, identifying that, and then actually fixing the problem. So whether that be through health intervention, it could be a psychosocial issue. So if somebody's mowed the lawn beside them when they're trying to have a night, sleep during the day between night shifts, or they might be going through a divorce or some family issues, and to have those conversations and actually understand why that person wasn't fit for work and actually work through them with that, or the longer term health stuff that the boys spoke about, sleep apnea, etc. Actually identifying those problems. You want to fix that person up and get them back in the vehicle fit for their role. That's, we pour a lot of money, time, effort, training into our people. We don't want to send them down the road. We actually want to fix them up and keep operating for us. I think that's a wonderful outcome.
One theme that's coming through from this is that really we're talking about the technology, but fundamentally this is about the human factor.
100%.
This is about how real human beings respond to the technology. I think you had an interesting story in some of the background that I've read about a worker who had microsleeps a lot and how he responded when he was told about this. Can you tell us the story?
Yeah, sure. So that was fairly early on. So it was when we were trialing the products in 2015. There were two particular gentlemen. So we ran a sort of a silent alarm mode for a period just to make sure the system was working correctly. We were really interested in our baseline data. So we knew fatigue was an issue at our site, but we had no way of measuring that. And by putting the system in, and we only had it over 10% of our fleet at the time, but the number of events that we were seeing was really quite shocking. And so there was two particular gentlemen that had quite a lot of fatigue events, and one of them was having quite a lot during the day, which is pretty rare. You usually typically see about 80-90% of your fatigue occurs on night shift.
Right.
So this one particular guy, we ended up sending him off to sleep apnea tests, and it turned his life around, really. We have a promotional video that tells the story really, really well of Chad, and it changed his life outside of work as well. So he was falling asleep, driving his daughter to school and all these sorts of things. So he was so thankful for the system, really. Otherwise, we probably wouldn't have been caught. So,
Right. And what about the other one?
Yeah, so Michael. Michael, I think he had like 90 micro sleeps in a 10-hour period operating. So it was pretty extreme. They were yawns and they were low level fatigue events, but ultimately without the system we wouldn't have been able to identify that. So Michael was a bit of a different case. We brought him in and it was a conversation. And it was really about the way that Michael prepared for shifts. So he would wake up as normal and then try and he would sleep in the mornings and then try and stay up for the rest of the day and do his night shift. So he was up for like 24 hours just about by the time he got home from his first night shift. So just that small conversation with the mine manager around how he prepared. So it's like, well, just maybe change how you sleep, maybe have a sleep in the afternoon, see if that works. And, that was it. So a very small, simple change like that really helped Michael get through his night shifts and prepare better.
Yeah.
So, yeah, great stories.
Yeah, it is something. And John, you're nodding. It sounds like this is familiar to you also.
Absolutely, very similar story.
Yeah.
Yeah, really empowering ability to sit down and have that conversation with your operator and turn. Well, it's nearly like a journey together. So we certainly found it empowering to our people, being able to talk them through. Most people don't believe they're having a fatigue event until you show them their video. Yeah.
Right.
And that's, I mean, it's in and around the cultural journey that you take when you're trying to roll this process out. Yeah.
Right. Right. I have to imagine that some people don't respond well. Right. It's inevitable. It's part of being human, or some people it is. And what do you do then?
Look, if you take the 80-20 rule,
Yeah.
most of the workforce were happy about it. Obviously, there was still the few with the big brother, the cameras watching us.
Right.
We legitimately sat the people down after we, broadcasted the shift addresses that this is where we're heading. We went through the training. We showed people how the video was captured, how it was stored, and how it was dealt with.
Right.
We locked it down pretty tight, obviously, to who was going to have access to it.
Right.
And that started that process of the employees having trust in us that the system was there to protect them and make health and safety better.
Right.
But basically, in the end, there was a couple of noisy ones on every shift still. We pulled them in, we showed them their videos, and it fixed everyone. We've still not had a person try to cover the camera for a shift. So I think that's a tick to the culture of our company. We heard some sort of horror stories that there was sites where people were trying to cover the camera with, tape and hats and stuff like that. We've not seen it, so I take that our people took it as a positive change.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you mentioned the culture. It is striking what we've seen across companies across the economy over the past several years is the increasing importance of the culture. But you generally hear this about companies that are in sort of software, internet companies, stuff like that. What you're telling us is that in the most physically defined business in the world, mining, it's still the culture, right? Doesn't matter. It's still the culture. It's still the human factor. Craig, what about you? Similar stories like this? You've had similar experiences or not?
Ours was probably a little bit worse. So our workforce is like west coast of Tassie, so it's actually a really stable workforce in the respect that they never leave. So some of our guys have been there, like one of my guys, electrician's been there 53 years. And then majority of our operators have been there 20 to 30 years. So change is always very difficult no matter what you do. I mean, you can put in a brand new loader that's different to an old loader and you have a lot of trouble trying to get it across the line. So we put a lot of time into our truck drivers in the journey. So from pretty much stage one to when we first started talking about it, right through to the install. Right. We got a lot of noise. It's similar, and your workforce is similar to ours, I think just up the road. We got a lot of noise at the start, and it was probably only the first few shifts where we had any tampering stuff going on, or they'd tag it out because they said it wouldn't work, like log in and stuff. But that went away really quickly, and certainly we ran the silent period for that month. So essentially that month was pretty seamless because they knew it wasn't recording anything.
Right.
And then once we could give them feedback and show them what was happening in the shift that they didn't realise was happening, certainly the whole approach to it changed really quickly to, I would say within the first 4 weeks, it's become just accepted. Right. But certainly the start was challenging around the cameras, and we also added dash cams at the same time, so we sort of hit it a bit harder rather than have two battles. We sort of had one big battle right up front. But look, for the last 12 months, I've never heard a word said about it. Like, it's just part of their job now, and they know it helps them. So And certainly, there's been some really good stories similar to what the boys said, as far as it's improved their health and their life. Like, they can see what it's doing now, so it's certainly well embedded. And they would probably, prefer to have it now than not have it, to be honest.
What about the culture of safety and zero blame? That apparently is important, at least so we have heard. Neil, fair enough?
Yeah, absolutely.
And by the the zero blame culture, explain that if you can.
Well, no one comes to work to purposely hurt themselves or have an incident, right? So you've got to actually work through, it could be a breakdown of process, could be a breakdown of the environment that the person is operating in, etc. So, yeah, I think, and you get the runs on the board, as the guys said, like everyone was really quite fearful of the camera on the dash looking at them the whole time, but it just takes time to get trust from the workforce, I think, when it's something that you're implementing like that that's so unknown. For us, it was the very first camera-based system in a vehicle for us in Glencore in Australia. So we really broke the mold in putting a camera in a vehicle. You guys did 2 systems at the same time, which was great. So just breaking down that culture, and that just takes time because people were fearful of new introductions. I'm going to be blamed. They're going to send me down the road, etc. And all you can do is try and instill trust in them, but ultimately you'll get that trust over time. If you've put the processes in, you've shown that you're helping them, you haven't sacked anybody because they're fatigued, you actually want to fix them up, make sure they're fit for work, and then they can get through their shift.
Yeah. And inevitably it's going to take time.
Yeah.
If you're asking for trust, it can only be built over time.
Yeah, you've still got to do the right thing as a company, but ultimately it takes time.
Yeah. Was there a role of education and training before this that was useful? John, what about you?
Look, we rolled out a dummy system and put it in one of the training simulators so people were able to see what it was. And obviously we showed them all the training videos as part of the change management. We also had a similar journey with that zero blame. And quite importantly, we told the workforce that we're not using this to try and get you into trouble. We've got some fairly strict policies around IT and social media and mobile devices, and some of the footage you get of what was happening in those cabs. So we shared some of the photos, and we obviously covered people's faces. And we basically gave people a couple of weeks to change some of their behaviours of what they were doing in the cab, and brought them back in line with what's acceptable. And I think that was one of the most powerful bits that we did on our change in our journey that ticked the box that people went, you know what, they're not going to use this to try and sack us or get us into trouble. And it certainly opened the door for that AI conversation for further down the track to go, we can work with this company to make the system better.
Craig and the others as well, what would you think if the human validation was taken out of the equation?
As in, you didn't need the human validation? Yeah, no, well, that's probably the next step to where it gets to automated.
Yeah.
No doubt. And I mean, it'll still evolve.
Yeah.
Like for a system that's quite young, it's actually quite good now. And as Neil said, there's still a human element that has got to run the system. So, like, the natural progression is to get to where that's a fully automated system and it's seamless, I guess.
Right. Head nodding here. It sounds like the other two of you feel pretty much the same.
Yeah, well, we don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, though, right? So it's whatever we do with the technology, the next step, it needs to be right.
Right.
It needs to do a better job or as better job as the human.
Yeah.
So we'll see. Yeah, see where the future goes.
Yeah. Which gets us to another point, which is, what are the most promising emerging OAS capabilities? John, I'll start with you.
Look, I think the emerging stuff is the ability to predict where an event might occur. Yeah.
Right.
And I suppose that's for just purely our site. I can see that really helping embed it. if we could get there in the next few years, I think that just goes at the next level. Yeah.
Can you explain it a little bit? How is it possible to predict these things?
Well, if you've got a known area for, say, a behavioural event where we're asking an operator to look and give way at an intersection, a single lane area, that's on us. We've designed it like that.
Right.
If the system knows that, either geo-referenced or from an intelligence point of view, because it happens every cycle and it starts changing how it's going to behave,
right,
that's a big tick in the box. Yeah. Because there's intersections everywhere, and at some stage an operator needs to stop or slow down, look over either shoulder, look at the mirrors, check the dash. Right. There's a lot of it that occur in the machine.
Other two of you also. I mean, what do you see as the next thing, the frontier in the development of this technology?
Yeah, look, I'd have to agree. I think at the moment this system is intervening at the point of microsleep.
Right.
So at that point, the person's asleep already, and we're waking them up.
Yeah.
So we want to be upstream from that.
Yeah.
So
right.
whether it's predictive facial recognition around, you can see that person's fatigued prior to actually having a microsleep, because there are signs and symptoms in the lead up to that.
Right.
Yawning is a classic for that. So we're actually making a change in our business shortly, just bringing our TARPs up a level and just intervening earlier before the point where they're actually starting to fall asleep at the wheel. So and intervening earlier. So I think the system with having the ability to do that maybe prior to the eye closures occurring, and that's where we want to be. We don't want to be at the point of where a person's falling asleep at the wheel. We want to be ahead of that.
Okay, you've been in this world, operator alertness, operator awareness. What have you learned about it that you think is most valuable that other people ought to know about?
These types of projects are people projects. Like putting the technologies in is actually really easy. If it works, you put it in. It's actually the people change, and the guys have touched on it, like taking the people on the journey, getting the trust, putting the processes in. So just putting a system in and just think that that's your job's done.
You've done it.
No way. There is a whole journey to go on, and processes, and you've got to squeeze every ounce of efficiencies out of these things as well. We pay a lot of money for these things, so we want to get value for money out of them, and so do that in any way that you can. So
John.
Yeah, look, I just think the ultimate thing will be the future of mining's changing. We need to change with it. We need to be adaptive. If you don't think you've got a problem on your mine site with fatigue-related events, I would challenge you to trial something like this, and I can guarantee you will recognise that you've got an issue. If you're running a 24-hour operation, you've got an issue to some degree with some of your people.
Right.
Yep.
Craig.
Yeah, look, one of the best things about this process that we went through, and certainly Glencore helped us here, like fatigue events there's no hard data set on fatigue events because you're relying on the actual operator who didn't realise they're having fatigue events.
Right.
And certainly one of the good things that come out of it, and a learning curve, and as I said with Glencore, they warned us before we put it in and said be prepared, because you're going to see a lot of data and you're going to be shocked by it or surprised, because you always suspect it's happening, but there's no hard data to support that. And then all of a sudden you've got hard data in your face and you're having like hundreds of fatigue events. And, when you're talking in large dump trucks or, underground mines where they're a 5 metre drive and the truck's 4 metres wide going past LVs, and you're having like 100 fatigue events in a shift, it's quite daunting that you've got that happening. And that's when you sort of realise that you really need to speed the process up and understand how you can fix it. But what you don't know, you don't know. But once it's in front of you, it's quite eye-opening.
Yeah,
probably the right way to put it.
Yep. This is so helpful. It's real insight into this thing that is so valuable and so important. It's really great to hear from you. Thanks, guys. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Jeff.